Well, hi, Brittany.
Hello.
It's so funny to see you on this other
I know.
side of
Usually
the
we're
table.
sitting like this and I have to be like, hi.
Well, I've so enjoyed getting to know you over the last, I guess, couple months now.
Mhm.
But really, I feel like there's so much more that we have to talk about.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, so just kind of in a nutshell, who is Brittany Bailey?
Okay, well, I guess I can give my full name, right? Brittany Lynn Bailey, and I always say that because it's Lynn with an E, and so that's my full name. I grew up in Ohio, have lived in a ton of places since then, moved around a lot. I've lived in, Lexington, Kentucky, St. Louis, Missouri, Spokane, Washington, Colorado, Columbus, Ohio. I grew up outside of Columbus, and of course, here in Knoxville for my second stop. So I worked here, by the way, from 2006 to 2012, left for about a decade, and then returned in 2023.
Well, we're so glad that you're back home with us.
Yeah, so am I.
All right, so tell me a little bit about how you got into journalism.
Well, I would say probably it started, well, maybe not journalism, but the infancy of journalism. When I was a young kid, I loved to read books, and I used to read out loud to my stuffed animals. And I figured that was sort of the start of learning to talk out loud and wanting to share stories with people, even if they were inanimate objects. And then once I got into high school, they offered a shadowing program, and I didn't know what being a journalist was at that time. And I thought, what would be cool? Oh, I watch the news at night. It would be great to see what's happening behind the scenes. So I went and had a little shadow. It wasn't even an internship. I just watched what people were doing, and I instantly fell in love, which was great because that allowed me to then sort of focus and go, I want to go to journalism school. I want to do this. And so I applied to Northwestern, go Medill, and got in, and I guess the rest is history.
Well, and now you're here with us.
Yes.
For the second time.
For the second time.
So what made you come back to East Tennessee?
Well, I was asked. I mean, that's the simplest answer, but I've got to say that it was a really hard thing for me to leave here in the first place. I really formed a family here, and thankfully, so many of the people who were here before are still here. And I think that speaks to the type of station that this is. I mean, straight from the heart is not just a slogan. It's how we live, both when it comes to our journalism and when it comes to how we treat each other in the station. I know that you know that. And so I was working within the same parent company, and there was an opening, and I had talked to Corey, our news director, maybe a year before that about a different position. He had reached out, and I wasn't really ready to come back at the time. The position didn't feel right, but we were about to launch 10 About Town. And so when he talked to me then, I thought this could be a great opportunity. I knew that while it was great to be back home, so to speak, in Ohio and see some of my nephews start to grow up a little bit, I thought, let's try a new adventure and maybe go back to my old stomping grounds. And here I am. It's been great.
Well, speaking of adventure, you got to explore East Tennessee the first time around.
Yeah.
And now you come back all these years later. So what would you say is your favorite thing about East Tennessee?
Well, just to talk about that, it was such a wild thing to come back and see how much had changed. And it was technically 11 years since I had been here. And it was great to see some of the things that haven't changed, of course, the Sun Sphere, Neyland Stadium, all of that. But I mean, speaking of Neyland, Cumberland Avenue, totally different than it was when I was here the first time around. The old city barely was built up. Now it's this thriving area. And so those things were great to see when it comes to the changes. But I love that we've got the downtown city. We've got the university that everybody loves. And then we've got the Smoky Mountains. I mean, you kind of got everything here, right?
You really do.
Yeah.
Well, you've told thousands of stories, I'm sure, over your career. Is there one that sticks out to you or one that has touched you personally in all these years?
It's tough. I think we get asked this type of question a lot, and I think about it a lot. And I feel like on different days, I'm reminded of different stories. And so my answer might change. Today, I look back at one of the first stories that made an impact. I was a really young journalist working in Macon, Georgia. I think I forgot to add that to my list when I was listing off all the places earlier. But I interviewed a man who was very old at the time, and he was going through something because when he was a teenager, he stole a pair of tennis shoes. He was a black teenager years and years and years ago. He was sentenced to years in prison for stealing a pair of shoes. And it just, then he escaped, and he spent a life living a great life. He never made another mistake in his life. He escaped, started a family, worked a job, did all of that. But somehow his fingerprints, I'm trying to remember the exact details of the story, got into the system and he got rearrested. And he was maybe in his 70s or 80s, and they were thinking about sending him back to prison. And people came and advocated for him and said, hey, this was not a fair thing to happen. And it sort of opened my eyes to the justice system a little bit and how we can be advocates for people. And so I'll never forget that story. More recently, I would say, since I came back here, I got to meet Ned Patterson, and he's a local guy who has ALS. And that was really important to me because my grandmother died of ALS. And I think I wanted to get close to the organization, the ALS organization. And I met him and told sort of his love story, actually, with his wife, Beth. And they made such an impact on me. I try to reach out to them and touch base with them, and they do the ALS walk every year that I try to do. And so that has made sort of a more recent impact on me, is just seeing the fight that he has to sort of, he has beaten the odds when it comes to this disease. He's had it for more than 5, 6, 7 years now, and is still sort of going strong, so to speak, as strong as he's able to. So those are the stories that come to mind today.
What a range, because we cover everything, literally everything that you just described. I mean, we do it all. All right. So could you imagine a life outside of journalism? If you never got into journalism, is there something else that you would want to be or have thought about being?
I mean, can I just live a life of leisure? Is that
I'm with you on that one.
I was going to say but that should also tell you that's about all I can imagine doing, because I think when we get to a certain age, you've seen other people leave the industry, and you sometimes go, should I try something else? And then I think about it and I go, I can't. I'm not ready to leave. Whether it's a good or a bad thing, I think we wear our role of journalist in a way where it's sort of ingrained in who we are as a person. I don't know that that's a healthy thing to make that a part of your personality, but I am a journalist. I don't know what I am if I'm not a journalist. So maybe that's something I need to deal with in therapy. I don't know. But it's hard for me to imagine doing anything else. If it's not, just sort of playing with my dog and traveling, this is what I got to do.
I understand that. It's really hard to separate the two, especially after all these years.
Yeah.
Is there someone who you'd say inspires you to be a better journalist, or someone that you've always looked up to?
Well, I would say, the answer that a lot of people give is probably Boyd Huppert, right? If you're not familiar with Boyd, you got to look up his things. That, as far as storytelling goes, I couldn't even dream of being able to tell his story the way that he can. But I will watch his stories and I'll get both inspired and then depressed that I could never live up to what he can do. But I guess that's all part of it. But on a local level and in all seriousness, I look up to John and Robin. They were here the first time around, and you will never find two better leaders in a newsroom. And I have worked in many newsrooms at this point. So they carry themselves in the way that you would want anyone leading a newsroom to do it. So I love them.
I love them too. I'm right there with you. All right. You probably have a lot of people that come visit you, since this isn't your place where you were born. So when people come visit you here in East Tennessee, where do you take them?
I think it's the typical answer, Market Square, right?
Yeah.
You got to show them downtown and walk around and see all the shops and Gay Street. And it's just such a great thing. And now we can walk down to the old city and the new stadium and all of that. And then I think everybody wants to drive by campus and see the Sun Sphere and see Neyland Stadium. And we're right along the river too. And then if we have time, you got to go into the Smokies. So
there's so many great places. All right. We have some throwback video. You probably weren't even alerted to this, so we're going to play it. I don't know if you can see it. But while that's playing, we have a wild card question. What is something about you that would surprise people? What's something people don't know about you?
Well, I feel like I'm trying to think of my hobbies. I guess that, I tap dance. I also like baking and cooking. I do Brittany's Bites. I cross stitch. I love crossword puzzles, listen to audiobooks a lot, and I can name all of the states in alphabetical order.
No way.
Within about 30 seconds.
Oh my gosh, Brittany, I had no idea.
Yeah. So I guess that's a fun fact.
I love it. Well, this has been so fun. It's so great to get to know you better.
Yeah. Thanks for chatting with me and asking all of these amazing questions. Appreciate it.